Hello, fellow adventurers, and welcome to the Mysterious Adventures Podcast. I'm your host, Palladino Joey, or Joey Awajan. Mysterious Adventures is available on all of your favorite podcasting apps. I thank each and every one of you once and always for downloading and listening to this show. It's a great pleasure to be back on board with you once again today, as we're going in a very interesting direction today. Very, very interesting. So kind of like the ancient history type of stuff, and it can lead to some connection to fallen angels once again. There's always a connection somehow, some way, isn't there? But it's ancient history. It's a fascinating thing that not everybody knows about, not everybody's talked about, like the archaeology type people out there definitely have a lot of knowledge of this, but not everybody does. I didn't know a whole lot about this, and I didn't realize that this connection to a video game was real. That's real. Oh, it's real life? Okay, I didn't know that. Well, it is. The Nazca Lines. So we're going to talk about the Nazca Lines today in Peru, South America. Apparently they were created between 500 BC and 500 AD. So insane stuff. So generally speaking, we're going to refer to Wikipedia a bit for some of these, for some of the general information before we kind of delve deeper a bit into, what's going on out there, maybe some opinions and such. So apparently the Nazca Lines are a group of over 700 geoglyphs made in the soil of the Nazca Desert in southern Peru. They were created between 500 BC and 500 AD, so over a 1,000-year period. Yeah, it took a while. They were by people making impressions or shallow incisions in the desert floor, removing pebbles and leaving different colored dirt exposed. There are two major phases of the Nazca Lines. The Paracas phase from 400 to 200 BC. So we're talking way back in the day. We're talking, 2,400 to 2,200 years ago. Yeah. Approximately, of course. And the Nazca phase. So there's the Paracas phase and the Nazca phase from 200 BC to 500 AD. In the 21st century, several hundred new figures had been found with the use of drones, and archaeologists believe that there are more to be found. See, because that's the whole point. The size of these, that's what's just amazing. I mean, they can absolutely spread over a long range of land. And it's incredible. The fact that human beings did this and with such precision is what is so remarkable. Precise. Like, how can they do it? That's the million-dollar question. How is this possible? And that's kind of what we're going to talk about a bit here. And how you can't really even see your work unless maybe you're on top of a mountain or something, which I suppose some of them were able to kind of scout and look at. But to really be able to admire it and, to be able to enjoy the fruits of your labor, so to speak, you'd need to be able to fly or have a drone, like with a camera, where you could keep seeing it. Something like a drone, or way back in the day, like a helicopter or an airplane. As crazy as this might sound, see, I may have heard of these kind of in passing, but didn't really pay attention until maybe like a year or so ago on a Haunted Cosmos Dusty Tome episode. Dusty Tomes, where it's kind of like a side bit where when you pay... you know how some popular podcasts out there like Haunted Cosmos, Blurry Creatures, things like that talk about similar stuff that we're talking about here on Mysterious Adventures. This is kind of like part of that family, you could say. The, ancient history, cryptoid, Nephilim, all that kind of stuff. Family. Haunted Cosmos has a paywall if you want to get the Dusty Home episodes as well, which are kind of like a subsidiary of the Haunted Cosmos feed, basically, like the whole show, basically. It's a subsidiary where it's like shorter stories about it could be ancient history, it could be something semi-recent, it could be sightings of the Mothman, like the last episode. Thank you to anybody and everybody that may have listened to that episode. Really appreciate that. It's an absolute pleasure, to say the least. So, because that one's doing pretty good. I believe it's second place so far, all time in Mysterious Adventures downloads. The Pyramids one is, kicking butt. So I suppose that would, because that was quite a find, quite a surprise. Where the Nazca Lines aren't really a brand new find, but to some people it's one of those pieces of history that's fascinating and hard to comprehend how it was possible they were even created by human beings. That may have kind of slipped by us. Like, we're just kind of like, oh, that, okay, and then don't really realize it, don't really understand it. maybe you see kind of like this, maybe like a hint of it, an image of it, but it doesn't really click in you as to that's kind of weird. That's how wait now, you didn't really understand it right away as to how people were able to do such a thing. So that's kind of what this show is about now. You get to kind of jump into this, and that's sort of where Haunted Cosmos of the Dusty Tome episode that was made about. Yes, you can check that out if you want to. I'm going to try my absolute best not to plagiarize or anything. In fact, I have no real plans to plagiarize. But, there'll be some similar conversation as to what was talked about. It's episode 66. So, again, giving my sources here. March 26th, June 26th. A great time of year. Absolutely wonderful. Like NBA draft and getting close to July 4th and swimming and enjoying summer and all that. So, just a year ago, Dusty Tome episode 66, the Nazca Lines. So, anyhow, how these were kind of created in general terms here, like layman's terms. Most lines run straight across the landscape, but there are also figurative designs of animals and plants, and those are some of the most fascinating things. The combined length of the lines is more than, 1,300 kilometers or 800 miles, and the group covers an area of about 50 kilometers or 19 square miles. Crazy. The lines are typically 10 to 15 centimeters or 5 to 6 inches deep. They were made by removing the top layer of the reddish-brown ferric oxide coated pebbles to reveal a yellowish-gray subsoil. Yeah, so you can see it's like a lighter color. So it's like kind of almost like a, using, like something on your phone or something. Or before that, like ink paint, like obviously like maybe on your computer, though. Because the precision of this art, of these designs, is insane. Like, human beings can't do that, especially something that big. But I guess they did. But how did they do it, though? Who helped them? Nudge, nudge, hint, hint. Yes. The width of the lines varies considerably, but more than half are slightly more than 33 centimeters / 13 inches wide. In some places, they may be only 30 centimeters / 12 inches wide, and in others, they reach 1.8 meters or 6 feet wide. Yeah, there's some bigger ones. Almost look like a highway or something. Some are awfully big. Some of the Nazca lines form shapes that are best seen from the air. Yes, at around 500 meters or 1,600 feet. Again, you'd have to be flying, like a drone or something. Although they are also visible from the surrounding foothills and other high places. So yeah, you can do that, but you wouldn't get the same real view. You're going to be kind of diagonal, and you might not be able to see everything as clearly as, say, with like being able to fly over it. A helicopter, say, back in the day, when that was the best thing you had, or even drones with cameras, which would make things extremely easy to photograph or videotape / video data, whatever the term would be, digitally record. Yeah. Anyhow, the shapes are usually made from one continuous line. Yep, the largest ones are about 370 meters / 400 yards long. So bigger than a football field. So basically the actual shape, like an individual shape, like one of them is a monkey with a very squiggly tail. Another is a condor, which is absolutely amazing. Holy Toledo, is that an amazing thing? And I'll have a backstory behind that. But just generally saying, there's one that's going to be really mysterious. We'll get to near the end of the show. Just to tell you how mysterious and fascinating all this is. But yeah, in general terms, they're larger than a football field. So how do human beings make incredible images with such precision that are larger than a football field when you can't even really see what you're doing as you're doing it? How? I mean, you can kind of do it piece by piece, I suppose, but how do you make it so perfect? How? You know what I mean? So that's the fascinating part. Because of its isolation and the dry, windless, stable climate of the plateau, the lines have mostly been preserved naturally. Yeah, see, that's the thing. That's why they're still there, which is really cool. Extremely rare changes in weather may temporarily alter the general designs. As of 2012, the lines are said to have been deteriorating because of an influx of squatters inhabiting the lands. Squatters? What are squatters? Oops. No idea. Anyhow, we'll just leave that alone. It's pretty fascinating stuff, though. Absolutely. It's just, Unreal. The first public mention, so rediscovery, the first public mention of the Nazca Lines was by Pedro Cieza de Leon in his book of 1553. Holy moly. And he described them as trail markers. Because you couldn't really see what it was. Other stuff that took place in more semi-modern times, the 20th century, rather than 1500s. Well, we go 1569. This is the rediscovery. Luis Monzon said reported having seen ancient ruins in Peru, including the remains of roads, quote unquote roads. Next, so to the 20th century we go. Although the lines were partially visible from nearby hills, partially visible, that's the whole point. The first to report them in the 20th century were Peruvian military and civilian pilots. In 1927, Peruvian archaeologist Toribio Meja Zespi, I do believe I got that correct, spotted them while he was hiking through the foothills. He discussed them at a conference in Lima in 1939, so that's a heck of a lot later. Paul Kosek, but I do believe this was mentioned in the Haunted Cosmos Dusty Tome, so there's that. So again, citing a source, you could say, but also citing a source here. An American historian from Long Island University in New York is credited as the first scholar to study the Nazca Lines in depth, because they could probably fly by then, right? Well, in Peru in 1940 to 1941, is that all? That's pretty recent, not? To study ancient irrigation systems, he flew over the lines and realized that one was the shape of a bird. The most fascinating one probably of all. Another chance observation helped him see how lines converged on the horizon at the winter solstice in the southern hemisphere. See what I'm talking about? Winter solstice. Now, why would they line up with the stars and all that type of thing, and how they it's kind of like a giant calendar in a way too, that way, like lining up with the stars or with the way the sun is and such. It's unbelievable. And again, that kind of goes back to linking things like like Stonehenge and others, where I can, because we'll have a Stonehenge episode in the future, maybe multiple Stonehenge episodes. I'm sure we may even revisit the Nazca Lines conversation here, but this could be kind of like the main episode, you could say. Kosik began to study how the lines might have been created, as well as to try to determine their purpose. He was joined by archaeologist Richard P. Scheidel from the United States and Maria Reich, I believe, a German mathematician and archaeologist from Lima, to try to determine the purpose of the Nazca Lines. They proposed that the figures are designed as astronomical markers on the horizon to show where the sun and other celestial bodies rose on significant dates. Isn't that cool? Archaeologists, historians, and mathematicians have all tried to determine the purpose of the lines. So, you know how the stars come up at different times of the year. Like, say, I probably, we could do probably a whole episode about that, like astronomy and such. Like, Orion usually starts to pop up around November-ish, and it kind of lingers around, but different parts of the sky. As you get further and further into the seasons, into winter and then eventually spring, you'll, like, say when the sun sets, Orion will be a heck of a lot further west, because everything goes from east to west, east to west, east to west, just like the sun and the moon go east to west. Like you see Capella popping up in the northeastern sky at the end of August, especially into September, October, so to speak, and it lasts all the way. It's a gold star, gold or yellow star, kind of like the sun, and it lasts well into the spring, and then finally disappears into the west, where you don't really see it for a few months until the end of August into early September again. Sirius, I used to call it the Christmas star. It really kind of isn't, but it'd pop up a bit later into December-ish. Sirius, not Cirrus. Sirius, very, very bright star. It's the brightest star in the sky, not like the brightest body, obviously, outside of the sun and the moon. Yep, obviously Venus is the brightest, then Jupiter, and then Mars, and so on and so forth. Mercury, all them. But Sirius is the brightest actual star. That pops up in the winter and such in the southern sky, generally speaking. Capella's more in the north. Orion's kind of like general, it's generally south, but not too far south. It's not like way in the southern horizon, so to speak. But they lined all this stuff up according to the times of the years and such. And it's just it's really interesting how they were able to do that. And I suppose, even somebody like me can kind of watch if you pay attention. And then you have an app that I think that is really helpful. and not a Ouija board like Ghost Radar or something. What's this app called? Skyview. You can get the paid version or the free version, but it is fascinating to, you can kind of line it up as long as you calibrate it simply by doing a figure eight once you turn it on. I'll open up the app anyway, and you could kind of like line the screen up to the sky to a certain star, and you'll be like, oh, that's, Capella. That's Capella. That's, whatever, Betelgeuse or whatever the heck else there are out there. Oh, that was Jupiter the whole time. Holy cow. Well, duh, it's really bright anyway. So, yeah, it's fascinating, though, and it's really cool how they're able to line them up to the right time, the right place. It's pretty cool. And sometimes it gets even deeper, and how they understood all that solstice and such way back then, which is, again, fascinating, but also it's believable that people could kind of understand some of that stuff. But the question is why, though? Like, what's the point to some of this? It always seems to end up to a similar thing at the end of the day. And unfortunately, that's generally leading towards the worshiping of fallen angels. So yeah, not trying to get dark and creepy on you, but at the same time, well, here we go again. Yep, of course. Of course. So what happened way back in the day? Now, this was also, again, mentioned on the Haunted Cosmos episode, but we're going to talk about it here too because, well, maybe you either don't want to listen to the Haunted Cosmos, or you don't want to subscribe necessarily, or this or that. But, this or that. To subscribe to anything, or just generally speaking, you'd rather just listen to Mysterious Adventures, and I really appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. But conversation of that there were legends with the ancient Incas dating back to the Great Flood. The Great Flood, like after the Great Flood, at times, golden-haired giants came from boats as the water, finally retracted, the water finally subsided, and you could get shorelines again. That golden-haired giants arrived in that part of the world, in South America. Everything more of a Pangea world, I'm sure, still at that time, because the continents didn't divide until the days of Peleg, which were a number of generations after, after Shem and all of them. And Peleg, of course, is the descendant of Shem, so you'd be a Shemite, so to speak. But yeah, it was a number of generations after. So the continents hadn't divided yet, but at the same time, they were there on that part of, so like the other side, basically, of the world, so to speak, is what it would be. You could say like the western side of South America, which would be Peru, that they came off of ships, these golden-haired giants. A golden-haired giant. Now, put two and two together. What's a golden-haired giant? Please tell me what's a golden-haired giant. Anybody? Anyone? It's a fallen angel. That's right. Fallen angels, most likely. Yep, unfortunately, a fallen angel more than likely. Fallen angels are more than likely what this is. Specifically in Patagonia, originates from early, yeah, so some of these they even talk about early European explorers, which could again it's not too surprising that they would be kind of spread all over the place, because that's kind of what happened in the past. You hear about giants all over you hear about giants all over the world. Like, where did Cyclops come from? Where did Hercules come from? Like Zeus and all that. Zeus would be like Hercules' father. Well, Zeus was more than likely a fallen angel. So, more than likely, if he was a quote-unquote god with a small g, he was probably a fallen angel, because he was. So, at the end of the day, and more than likely, a lot of these ancient Incas learned some of this technology, some of this ability, and able to line the stars and such as well. But to be able to achieve feats like this, more than likely were probably learned from these quote-unquote gods that these people worshipped. And at the end of the day, these quote-unquote gods that they worshipped are the whole purpose of these designs to begin with, so they can worship these false gods. So that's pretty much the whole conversation when it comes to the golden-haired giants at the end of the day. So as we continue to conversate, like I said, the size and perfection of these lines couldn't be done by earthbound humans, especially during this time. It had to be something with airborne technology, right? So maybe a fallen angel, yeah. Like I said, South America, there are legends of ancient golden-haired giants that came from the sea. After the waters of the Great Flood had subsided enough for things to be quote-unquote normal again, the legend says that these giants brought incredible technology and know-how. They helped the ancient Incas build incredible artifacts. This all sounds familiar yet again, and almost has to be real. Yeah, because, where did these things come from? How could they possibly do it? So, it's just crazy. How could they do it themselves? They probably had some kind of help with some kind of technology that obviously we don't know about in this day and age. The Incans of Peru carved these lines or scars into the ground with incredible precision that no one could understand even today. These carvings are in the ground are larger than football fields, like I was saying. They were unfortunately made to worship. And what I believe once again were fallen angels or small g gods. These carvings were designed to match the stars in the sky for particular times of the year with perfect accuracy. It's crazy. And again, it's just reeks of fallen angels. A golden-haired giant is a fallen angel. Like, what else could it be? I'm going to probably transfer over it's like the Aliens episode, basically, from Freedom of Thought, that did not get a heck of a lot of love, because it probably wasn't reaching its target audience from you could call it a political show, Freedom of Thought. So I'm going to bring it over here, at least most of it, because obviously you have to, move stuff around a bit, cut some pieces out that might be a little on the, because it was more of a political show. But there's a huge chunk of it that could absolutely fit on this show, and was begging is begging still to this day for its target audience. And one of basically the feature presentation of the aliens, spoiler alert, the possible aliens that have been talked about during abductions and all that, were Nordic aliens, which were tall, gold-haired, blonde-haired, blue-eyed men, or people, whatever the heck, beings. That's a fallen angel. Put two and two together. Anyhow, continuing on the actual Nazca lines, these lines took centuries to make, as generations would pass on the work to the next generation. Think about that. How could you admire your work when it's taking you centuries to make? Your generation, you're done, you worked on that most of your life, and then you passed away and pass it on to the next generation to continue, and beyond and beyond and beyond. But for some reason, they had to get it done for whatever reason, what was controlling them. And obviously something was, as far as I'm concerned. The most impressive design is a giant bird. It was a condor. It was a condor, like I said earlier. The exact same Nazca line is in Shining Force 2 for the Sega Genesis. And this is obviously me talking, some of it, like notes and stuff putting together. The exact same Nazca line is in Shining Force 2 for the Sega Genesis. It's incredible. Perfectly drawn lines on the ground, and again, how it spreads out over a very large area, just like the image of the condor. In fact, it's the same image of a condor, just like that Nazca line. And in the video game, though, what is it? An ancient flying ship or plane. In the game, at least. Yeah, like you kind of go in, and like some door somehow, there's some key to get in some ancient key to get in. I don't remember exactly what it was, but you could get in. I don't know if it was some kind of a spell or something, but it's a video game. You get in, and it kind of like eventually comes to life. Not literally like life, like it's like a bird, like a living bird. It's more of a giant kind of like an ancient technology, an ancient machine, but like way higher technology than anybody in that game had ever seen before. Way higher, like where the ancient technology is far beyond anything that the people in that game had ever seen. Whereas in that game, it's kind of a swords and shields type of a game and all that. So it's a very fun strategy RPG for the Sega Genesis, where eventually you defeat a very powerful demonic enemy in the Netherlands. Not the Netherlands, but the Netherworld. Excuse me, not the Netherlands. Those damn Netherlands. Okay, just kidding. The Netherworld. Creepy. So it's evil, an evil enemy, of course. But anyhow, an ancient flying ship. Unfortunately, in the game, though, the poor thing gets destroyed by some stupid laser, like another ancient technology. It's these flower-looking things that are laser cannons that shoot down the thing, and it's so sad. It's so sad they killed it. It's just, you think about that and it breaks your heart. Absolutely breaks your heart. The most mysterious of all the Nazca lines, though, the Nazca designs, would be the astronaut, which looks eerily like a gray alien. And the ancient Incas called it a traveler. Very interesting indeed. The ancient Incas called it a traveler. I'm thinking that either that or the condor is going to be the low for this particular episode. But just look at it. I mean, it looks like a gray alien, doesn't it? Maybe the head's a little bit smaller, but no, it looks like a gray alien. Isn't that crazy? So who is this being that they called an astronaut? I think it is a gray alien. I think they saw a gray alien, maybe multiple gray aliens. Because why would they do that? Why would they design this thousands of years ago? It tells you something, doesn't it? It tells you there's something going on. I think there's absolutely something going on here when you look at that. That is the most mysterious part of the entire thing, and the most unexpected. An astronaut. They called it an astronaut, a flying, a traveler from another world, or at least in their opinion. But at the end of the day, it's a pretty good idea what these gray aliens are. Again, they're more than likely connected to an ancient civilization, to Lucifer in the past. But it's open for opinion. I can't know for sure what they really are. But gray aliens, one way or another, are alien to this, are aliens to us. There's no doubt about it. Were they on this planet many years ago before Adam, like in the pre-Adamic world? But then they're kind of still around like this, in this form, in this current form, as some kind of, some kind of a deceiver, working under their boss named Lucifer. But that's kind of my belief, because I don't think they're good guys. I don't think they're good guys. I don't think they're your friend. I think they're here to deceive. Obviously, the Nordic aliens, the gold-haired giants, obviously here to deceive. Because do they point you to God, or do they point you to themselves? They pointed people to themselves at the end of the day. So that's the unfortunate fact about all this. It's unfortunate that it does kind of lead to, it leads down the road of giants and, obviously probably more than, giants and enemies of God at the end of the day. Still, it's fascinating to think this kind of stuff is on the earth, and this kind of capability happened. As it was a huge mystery for so long. But when you put two and two together, and by God's grace, you can understand why this kind of stuff may have been possible, because of help from beings that are, that have capabilities far beyond regular human beings. And man, it is incredible when you look at all the different possible designs. But the astronaut is the most fascinating at the end of the day. The other one, like we talked about, was the monkey. The monkey one with the very large spiral shape tail. That was very strange, interesting. I'm not 100% sure why there's a huge spiral, but I do know there's a story behind it. I think in the Haunted Cosmos they talk about that a bit as well. The condor obviously is just incredible, gorgeous design. It's fascinating. There's a spider that's done so well as well. Just the precision of it is incredible. It's funny how probably one of the weakest designs probably is this astronaut. Because I think maybe they did this one themselves. Because they're like, who's this thing? And it took place later on during the course of time. But I mean, it's still, Jiminy Christmas, the fact that this was made about 2,000 years ago. I mean, during biblical times. Like, imagine, during Jesus' time, you saw something like that. They'd be like, what's going on? You realize that. Yeah, it was in South America, but it was during the days of, right around Jesus' time, or approximately, may have been a little before, a little after. But what the heck is this? Holy moly, man. So, extremely fascinating, to say the least. Want to look at the possible different images. Yeah, like I talked about the monkey. There's one that looks even like a dinosaur, like a raptor, or like that condor one is just unbelievable. The hummingbird, that's another extremely famous one. It's so cool, so famous. So amazing. Yep, looks like somebody put them all together here. One looks like a lizard with a very long tail. One kind of looks like like a fox or wolf type of thing. Yep, there's a hummingbird. I said that 3 times already. Another's similar to a condor, but with like a longer beak. Man, it's fascinating. Oh. Yeah, there's multiple birds. They're like all over the place, and I get them mixed up sometimes. The condor, to me, still remains the most fascinating. Yeah, that alien-looking thing. Kind of almost looks like a character in, remember the game, like the robot characters in Berserk, if you happen to be a retro gamer. The arcade game that moved to the Atari and such, the Atari 2600, or VCS. Like the robots. It even kind of looks like one of those a little bit, but more humanoidish, I suppose, than robot-ish, like a machine. Humanoid, but definitely not human. That thing was not human. It's a gray alien type thingy. So, and people are even doing tattoos of Nazca Lines. What the heck? That's kind of funny. But I suppose, I mean, I am not a tattoo person. Never have been, never will be. But interesting. Yeah, somebody put the condor on there. Somebody put multiple things. Seems like condor is the most common. One, they had like a similar bird with more of a squiggly tail. That's interesting. Another one, they have like multiple, like the spider, the monkey, and such. So, man, people are even having tattoos of these things. Again, I'm not a tattoo person. If it's your thing, it's your thing. But it's not mine. It's not. But yeah, like it's cool to think another one of these looks like almost like a pterodactyl, maybe? So, or is that I don't know. It looks like a pterodactyl to me. Like kind of the long beak and such. But I don't see any wings on it. That's the only other thing. What are they talking about? No, sorry. But it's a fascinating thing. It is. Again, it's a shame if it's being used for worship, and you can kind of see that it looks almost like it does kind of look like something like magical or such, and obviously magic is not of God. So there is that. It's just the unfortunate reality of it all. But the technology is amazing, and just like, like finding giants and such. It's amazing, even though they were bad. That's the one thing. Unfortunately, giants were bad. But it is amazing to think like, wow, and how the Bible talks about there were giants in the land during the days of, Jared, the Genesis 6, and also after that, so like after the flood and such. So it's just fascinating as well to see how the Bible's, more and more real every day. More and more real every day. And how people talk about the veil between the spirit world and like the regular world that we're used to is thinning. Like we're seeing more and more, and that's maybe where more and more gray alien conversation comes into play as well. So this, to me, is a fascinating conversation with these Nazca Lines. I hope some of you have some conversation about this. It'd be nice to hear from any of you. Again, any other topics you'd like brought up on this show would be greatly, greatly appreciated. I'd love to hear from you. Like any other ideas you may have for Mysterious Adventures. Maybe stories you'd like to tell, some scary stories or fascinating and scary, or just freaking awesome stories. You're more than welcome to be a part of the show. Email me at paladinolive@yahoo.com, paladinolive@yahoo.com. You're also more than welcome to do an audio submission. Maybe you want to talk for a while on that. Just sending me like an audio submission with your smart device, or even using your laptop or desktop. Maybe you record like talking about something like, yeah, this happened and I've got some stories to tell you, or we could do a show together someday. if humanly possible, like on Teams or whatever. I guess that's what's available now because Skype has been stand packing, which is really dumb. But I guess it's kind of basically merged into Teams now. Microsoft bought Skype from Skype many years ago. They purchased Skype many years ago, and then eventually now Skype is merging into Teams. So Teams is obviously Microsoft as it is. So it kind of is what it is. Might be a little bit frustrating with how the technological world is done at times, but as long as it works, as long as it functions, and we can have a good conversation together, I'd love to hear from you. Love to hear from you if it's that way, or again, an audio submission, or simply an email, writing a couple paragraphs or a couple sentences, whichever is convenient for you, whichever is enough for you to tell the story that you want to tell, to express what you want to express. I would so much love to hear from you here on Mysterious Adventures. It would be an absolute pleasure. So I hope you enjoy this topic. I thought it's incredibly fascinating, something to look at, and just the fact that this kind of stuff could be done all those years ago. And it's just, again, like Solomon said, and we always refer to this, there's nothing new under the sun. And it's an absolute fact. There is nothing new under the sun. Like technology in the past, just like we talked about in that pyramids episode, may have far exceeded our technology today. It just happened to be a long time ago. May have far exceeded. Like nothing's new under the sun. Like a portable device like I'm holding right now, where you could see somebody's face on the other side of the world. Or you could see a huge story breaking on the other side of the world. You could see maybe you could see a total solar eclipse in India or something right now. It could happen. You could do that. Or just, or something that happened 30 minutes ago or something, and it's already up on YouTube. But I suppose that you could do that with TV. But you could literally have a conversation with somebody while maybe they're watching a solar eclipse on the other side of the world. It's freaking cool. So technology like that may have existed many years ago as well. And I'm starting to think it did. With that said, again, thank you so much for listening to this show. It is an incredible pleasure. Please tell your friends. Keep spreading it out there. Obviously, there's unfortunately, there haven't been really any comments except on Spotify, which is always more than welcome. I don't know if I'd like to look at all of them if possible. So Del Rojo was doing kind of like a fingers crossed thing on the guys of Pyramids. Genezel Latsid on the AI one said amazing, but also scary and nice. As Nera Elang said, I feel scared. This is during the void. I feel the scare. I feel scary with the background music, or scared basically. Genezel says amazing and scary. Both of them are from the Philippines, I believe. Yep. At least one of them is. Yep, Genezel for sure. Genezel says a giant appetizer. Yeah, on the giant appetizer, amazing, and then amazing again. So really appreciate those of you so much for listening. It's cool how this show can be worldwide. I don't think there's any comments on Facebook or Twitter or X or whatever it's called. The X account should have it all all of it's in the show description, but it'd be nice to have it up in front of me as well. At myadventure79, that's for Mysterious Adventures on X or Twitter. On Instagram, if I could have it up, please, it would be great. It is Mysterious Adventures 79. So it works perfectly fine there. And of course, Facebook is just, again, Mysterious Adventures. Look it up on there. Hopefully you can find the right one with the logo. And that would be absolutely terrific. So with that said, I want to thank all of you so much for listening. Again, please tell your friends about the show. If you'd like to donate to help this show to kind of to grow a bit, it's the Give Send Go is also in the show description. Completely optional, as cheap as 99 cents, up to, I don't even know if it's $4.99 or even higher. I don't know, but whatever the limit is. But as low as 99 cents, basically. And if you'd rather just not, that's okay. And you want to just keep listening the way you do, that's wonderful. Also, if you would like to, again, share the show with your friends, do a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for that. With that said, thank you so much, and we'll be back for the next adventure. Until next time, be safe, and God bless, and join me on the next adventure.